Personally, I feel like I am taking steps to not only better myself as an individual, that way that I can better my community around me. Because of that, I think that I am making strides to correct the wrongs in the little ways that I can. There are a lot of injustices in the world, and as one individual, I may not be able to solve all of them, but I can definitely chip away at it one little piece at a time.
As I reflect on a daily basis on where am I in regard to answering a greater call, something outside of me that moves me towards solidarity with others, more towards being a loving person, more towards compassion, more towards mercy. As I reflect on those things about my day, I can see sometimes where I feel consoled and where I can feel some desolation, or maybe I can feel more lightness and darkness in my life. And it's so recognizing those movements and then choosing the light and walking more into it, or choosing where I feel consoled and moving more into it. And by that I don't mean where I feel like happy, but rather where is something that there's more contentment, more joy, perhaps more challenge in life, that is something more fulfilling, that's lasting, rather than something that's fleeting.
Reflection is really important, and I think that one of the things that I know that my son has recently gotten into is meditation, and one of the things that I've been trying to do is work some meditation into my life. And we're so busy and so go all the time that sometimes it makes sense to take a moment to think about your day and to think about what's ahead of you and how you can kind of be present in the moment.
I've realized that I'm a small cog in the world, and I think my place in it is to help other people, as they are small cogs, really drive the big wheel forward. That's something that I'd love to be able to do, and I've reflected on how I can do that, and that's to be more intentional about what little I can offer and acknowledge all the other people who are offering what they can offer.
I think about myself as being connected to the broader world and the Earth community. We are facing a crisis of climate change, and I think that I have to recognize, my place on this earth and a part of that community, and do what I can to address that huge challenge. I think simple living is a big part of that, really discerning between wants and needs. What do I need to consume? What is the world telling me that I should consume? And really resisting those forces of materialism and capitalism that we've all been indoctrinated with, and putting relationships above things.
So reflection, one of these core gifts from the Ignatian heritage. To me, part of reflection is being relentlessly curious. I want to know, I must know what is going on in the world, things I don't know. How are things changing? How are things getting worse? How are things getting better? What are disciplines? What are elements? What are things that I don't know yet? In addition, I've got to find time and space to step back and to be silent. For me, I find that often when I'm walking, especially if I'm walking in the woods, whether that's on an afternoon or whether that's on a silent retreat. And then that combination, to take the things about which I've been relentlessly curious and to take that into a space when I can be silent, when I can not be bombarded by all those details that come into each of our lives. Those together help me to reflect, and then out of that to make decisions.
Reflecting on the world, I think that there needs to be more empathy and more of people listening to one another. And I think what's good about the world right now is that it's more connected than it's ever been, and communication with people around you and the people across the world is easier than it's ever been. So I think to improve the world, we just need to learn to listen to one another a little more, and that is something that you learn at Xavier and through a Jesuit education. And so reflecting on all of that, I think just learning to listen to one another and using the systems that we have in order to do that.
I think now one of the biggest challenge, maybe most of the countries, is try to tackle injustice and inequality. I think the world is reaching a level of really nice technology and advances in health and different topics, but like the differences between like the people who have more privilege and like the communities or the people who doesn't, it's becoming like wider. It's really huge. Like, and for example, now with the COVID vaccines, like there's countries who are now reaching the third dose, and there's countries that they don't have like even like to buy like the first dose of the vaccine. So it's thinking on that, like we have to think on the others, like we are not just like this community or this family or this country. We have to think wider. Even if we're not going to be the best of the best of the best, but I think we have to understand that being humans doesn't mean like you have to be the best, but it means like you have to share and to work for everybody.
I think that a lot of time I, myself, and a lot of other people make choices based on their own personal benefit. And I mean, that's like natural, you know, everyone's a little bit selfish. But I think that sometimes we really have to be aware that all of our choices have an effect, you know? So like something you go buy at the store, is it like an ethical purchase? Like you can't always be aware of like everything, every small choice that you make. But I think just like being more self-aware that, you know, everything you do does have an impact, and just being really like intentional when you're making big choices and small choices and everything in between.
I really try to fall back on my training in attitude change and persuasion. So my PhD is in interpersonal communication with an emphasis in attitude change. And through that, I've learned of lots of different theories, but one in particular is social judgment theory and theory of reasoned action and planned behavior. And these two theories help me to frame up, you know, where my existing beliefs are and how I can make either baby steps to change, which is not, it's harder to make leaps. It's easier to take small steps, which is what social judgment theory can teach us, even in self-persuasion. But also, theory of reasoned action teaches us that it's not just my attitudes, it's the people around me that are influencing me, and to try to surround myself, whether it's the faculty learning community group that I'm engaged with, or the students in the classroom where we have dialogue and we start to learn from each other. These things help us discern who we are as people and what our values are going to be and how they're going to be grounded.
In thinking about the values and the needs of other people, I think we achieve this by looking at things critically, by thinking about things critically, and acting critically. I think it is investigating our social worlds and being willing to push boundaries when that's appropriate, or to challenge our own expectations of ourselves and think outside the box and do things differently in a way that will make room for positive growth.
My values, my priorities, everything that aligns between my values and the priorities needs to be aiming at the impact that all our efforts will eventually unfold into. So everything is driven by impact.
When I think of intention and discernment, I think of this past year. I became a head volleyball coach at an elementary school, and I got to pick my team this year. And I've worked with every single girl that tried out for the team from 3rd grade up until 8th grade. And this year I was like, what girls do I want on my team? What girls do I have to cut? And I really had to I really had to reach out to other people. When it comes to discernment, it's not all about what do you think, it's what's going to help the greater community. So I reached out to people who've worked with these kids before, and I got their insight, and I was able to come up with a decision that would not only help my team, but also help the other teams within the community. So when it comes to discernment, I think listening to others and not always thinking about solely yourself, but how is it going to impact everyone else around you?
Discerning from my point of view and looking at the needs of society, I feel that it goes hand in hand. Looking at what is going on around me, being aware, being conscientious of things that are happening around me, and then also realizing and understanding what role I can play in making a difference, helping others, just making sure that whatever's happening in the community, whatever's happening in the world, things that are going on around me, making sure that I'm just aware and knowing it, but not only knowing it, but also being a part of that and being a part of the difference and making sure that I can contribute to society and help it to be a better place.
Everyone is tired of making choices right now. It feels like all we've done for a year and a half is make really hard choices about what we should or shouldn't do, who we should or shouldn't be. Is this okay or is that okay? And it's exhausting. And so I think if there's a minute that is hard to think about discernment, it is this historical moment. It's this moment on our campus. It's this moment in our world. I like to remind myself that there are many choices I make that I never realize are in front of me. It's okay to make it easier to make the hard choices by eliminating other choices. I don't want to have 50 options for breakfast because I need to save my energy for choice making to think about how I'm going to treat other people, what I'm going to do with my day, where I'm going to spend my energy. Those are choices that matter. And if I waste my decision-making power on things like what am I going to wear or what am I going to eat today, I'm too tired to think about how I want to prioritize my time. That's a skill I've learned from thinking about Ignatian approaches to discernment. And so I think our Ignatian tradition has many ways that we're invited in this moment to take deep breaths, set aside some choices that are taking too much from us, and really focus on what matters.